So another one of the things that we're going to talk about with regards to the Reformation is like papal authority, and things along these lines. Did you just want to talk about kind of like the Reformation and how it challenged papal authority and kind of like your take on all this stuff with like the doctrine of the papacy?
Yeah. Well, papal authority basically says that the Bishop of Rome is the representative of Christ on the earth, that he is, one of his titles was Vicarius Christi, that he was the vicar of Christ, the representative of Christ on the earth. And he claimed to be the supreme authority over everything, including the Bible. Well, these reformers, again, going way back to the 12th century with the Waldensians, and the papacy is something that really gets going around, let's say, the turn of the millennium, about 1000 AD. The papacy becomes this really huge authoritarian office. Before
Mm.
that, the Bishop of Rome is squabbling with other bishops, and other bishops are saying, we're all the same. Who do you think you are? You're not better than us. But it's really not until the turn of the millennium. Now, that's when things start. You'll notice, for example, the Pope crowns Charlemagne the
Mm.
Great, and begins the whole Holy Roman Empire. And from there on, the papacy begins to become politically involved. So the papacy is not just a religious institution, it's
Mm.
also political. The papacy would make decisions on borders in Western Europe, and the papacy would be the final arbiter in certain decisions that had to be made. It wielded incredible power in the world of politics. And if you ever look at the coat of arms of the papacy with the tiara, you'll notice there's two keys that are like in a crisscross fashion. One is
Mm.
gold, one is silver. The silver represents the Pope's secular authority, and the gold represents the Pope's religious authority. And so what happened with the reformers was they noticed that the church was basically following the Pope by whatever decision he made. So if the
Mm.
Pope said something, we call this de fiat, by utterance, by declaration, it is true. So Ignatius of Loyola, who created the Jesuits, the Counter-Reformation movement, he once said that if the church says, if something is black and the church says it's white, then we must believe that it's white.
Mm.
In other words, the papacy trumps everything. Well, the
Mm.
reformers said, now wait a minute here. Christ is the true head of the church. He is the supreme ruler of the church, and the church is his body.
Mm.
How can the Pope claim to be head of the church? Where does the Bible teach that Christ has any human representative? I mean, the Roman
Mm.
Catholic Church thinks that Peter was the first installed Pope, but all of the early church fathers did not recognize that truth, that Peter was the first Pope. Um, and so what the reformers did was the reformers looked at the scriptures again, looking for this backup for the papacy, couldn't find it.
Mm.
Papacy was a very corrupt institution. At one time, there were three different popes rivaling each other. This
Mm.
was during the so-called Babylonian captivity of the church, and the headquarters of the papacy moved from Rome to Avignon, France, for a number of years. And then, of course, there's the story of popes who sired illegitimate children, and so forth. And this was happening even in the medieval period. And so the reformers came to the point where they unilaterally, basically, not only rejected the papacy, but they denounced the Pope as Antichrist.
Mm.
And in fact, all the major Protestant confessions, whether it's the 39 Articles of Faith of the Church of England, or the Westminster Confession, or the London Baptist Confession, the Second Baptist Confession, or even the Methodist Confession of Faith,
Mm.
the Heidelberg Confession, the Synod of Dort, all of these Protestant confessions, every one of them decry the papacy as Antichrist, because the papacy, in claiming to be the vicar of Christ, the word vicar means to be in the place of,
Mm.
like vicarious atonement.
Yeah.
Well, the Greek equivalent of that is the word anti. And so when the reformers saw Vicarius Christi, they said that's the Latin equivalent of Antichrist. And so they said, by your own mouth, you've identified yourself as Antichrist. So they saw that as usurping the place of the Holy Spirit, who is the rightful one who comes in the place of Christ, the other comforter. And
Mm,
when the Pope claimed to be the Holy Father, which is his official address, when people address the Pope, they address him as Holy Father. They saw that as an usurping of the title of God the Father, the right of God the Father, who is the Holy Father. Jesus addressed him as such. And when the Pope claims to be the head of the church, the visible church, they saw that as usurping the authority of God the Son. And so what they saw in the papacy was a blasphemy against the Trinity, against the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, where the Pope is aggregating to himself the offices of the triune God. And
mm.
so you can understand and see why these reformers took a very dim view of the Roman Catholic Church.